Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second edition of Vivre. I am Michael Oden, and this is my co-host, Aldous. Welcome.
Yes, I'm back again. Somehow
Yeah,
we
I
survived
know.
the first episode.
I know it was an interesting start, but I had a blast. Aldous hit me up and he was like, "Hey man, I've done the video for the second episode. I completely understand if you don't want to continue considering the views." And I was just like, "I don't give a shit about that. I have fun chatting Napoleon." And he was like,
Hell yeah.
"Awesome, great." And so we're here with all of two of you in the chat. So thanks for being here. Hopefully we get some more people coming in. If not, maybe they'll catch it on the replay. But for now, just two nerdy dudes talking about Napoleon Bonaparte. We've got Nefarious is here in the chat. And Aldous and I have already said hi, and he made sure to let people know that we were so very white and so very nerdy, and I made sure to let people know we order all of our sandwiches with mayonnaise.
That's why.
And we have Arrogant Ape has joined the stream, so the party really begins now. For every like on this stream, a little French boy drops his That's awesome. But anyways, so today's stream, we are going to be picking up where we left off last time, and we're going to be talking about Napoleon's Italian campaign. And this is really the moment that defines the career of Napoleon Bonaparte and really begins to shape the next, 50 to 60 years of warfare and politics and everything. Is like everything, Napoleon creates an age within itself. And it all starts here in Italy. So,
for sure. I mean, you see developments, both tactically and organizationally, in the French army, the Northern Italian army of France, starting off here in the next. Really, it's extraordinarily fast. He accepts or is directed to take over the army by the Directory on March 2nd, 1796, and by the first week of April, he's already there and has already implemented some of his ideas for what he's going to do. And that's the seed that's planted that really you see mature in World War II with the mobility of warfare really coming to its peak. And arguably, it's the nascent form of our modern warfare, which is all based around mobility. But it all begins here. It all begins in northern Italy in 1796. It's the perfect storm for all of these wonderful ideas that have been floating around across continental Europe for 15, 20 years to finally start to be implemented and show what they can do. And it's expressly because Napoleon is not a member of the intelligentsia. He's not an elite.
In fact, he's given this assignment as a bone. Like, as we established last time, he had saved the Directory's ass during the whiff of grape shot. And so he's given this command as kind of a pat on the back, but really they aren't expecting him to do much of anything with this. The main war is being fought by more experienced generals that are a member of that intelligentsia class over on the French-Austrian border. They're busy fighting, the Austrians who allied with the Prussians and what have you. And meanwhile, Napoleon is given the command of the army of Northern Italy. And furthermore, he's in charge of these guys who are veteran fighters that have been at this for a while. There's one of the commanders that Napoleon is put in charge of has been in the French military since the 7 Years' War, right? This is the French and Indian War in our country. So this guy has been around for a long time, and so he's this guy with relatively no military experience is being put in charge of these veteran soldiers who've effectively been left to rot by the Directory. The army of northern Italy has practically no provisions. They haven't been paid in months. Most of the units are pretty close to mutiny, if not already there. And so Napoleon goes off to Italy, and there's obviously some initial tension with these veteran officers that he's been put in charge of, but immediately starts, as Aldous says, starts implementing some of his reforms, starts trying to get provisions brought in through those reforms. I believe he brings the guy that he brings as his aide de camp is going to be one of the influential people in kind of coming up with the structure of Napoleonic logistics, and they implement this this forage system through southern France to try and get the men at least some supplies to get morale back up a little bit. And as soon as Napoleon is in a position where he's able to actually coax this wounded animal into moving, he pushes it. And what they are able to accomplish in even just the first month is nothing short of astounding.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he arrives in the front on March 27th. And what the army that they have assigned him is 50,000 men strong, that probably realistically is about 35,000 actual combat ready, and only 60 cannon. And he has got limited horse. The situation for his logistics is a disaster. They're static. They really can't move. And in less than a month, he is able to separate off the Piedmont allies of the Austrian army and get them to surrender in 30 days. From that point, it is utterly astounding what he is able to do, and it's built on. And I'll go into this a little bit later after we go through some of the history, but it's built entirely on this concept of high mobility, high communication, and foraging. And foraging is key. The army will be living off the land as much as possible so that it can move as fast as possible.
100%. And so Aldous brings up a very good point. I think this is a great place to start with. He's able to, separate the Piedmontese from their Austrian allies. It is important to note that in this point of history, Italy is not a unified country. It is a collection of city-state republics and kingdoms that really haven't been together as a unified being since the Roman Empire.
Right. This is pre-Garibaldi. So and that's one of the reasons why he's sent there and why the Northern Italian campaign is important, because you've got all these small republic city-states, many of which that are immediately along the French border have adopted a lot of the Renaissance ideas of liberty and republicanism that you're seeing emerge in France during the Revolution. And they're strong.
Also, to that point, they're also very strongly allied with the revolutionary governments, and they this is something that Napoleon plays into his favor a lot as he's going through northern Italy.
No, for sure. And they're also very wealthy because of the trade that's coming through. So it's a trident of bonus for France. It's more territory that's going to align with them. It's economic benefit, and it's military positioning, because without these republics as a buffer, Austria is knocking right at their door. And Austria is already aligned with the Prussians and the German states to the north along the Rhine that are on their door. So without this buffer zone, Austria, the coalition has two avenues of attacking France. And the coalition hates everything that's going on in France because they've removed the monarchy, which is a sin to these people. This needs to be resolved. And yes, Nefarious, you do need more alcohol for this.
Absolutely. And no, the show is not over yet. We're just getting started. there's a lot to go over with the Italian campaign, and we're gonna have a blast doing it. At least Aldous and I are. You all in the chat, I'll be making sure that I'll bring up your comments and we'll commiserate with you very briefly before we promptly go back to geeking out over
Yes.
One of the greatest men in history.
Yes. And remember, this is not a lecture.
No, this is a conversation between nerds.
It's two nerds talking, not just one.
Yes, exactly. So that makes it better. But anyways, so as that's fantastic. All right, cool. God, where were we?
Napoleon, Italy, 1790.
Napoleon, Italy. So as established, like there's all these like sister republics and cities and everything like that exist, and the Piedmontese are anti-revolutionary. They are they do represent an old style monarchy, and they have a very fragile alliance with the Austrians, who are the Holy Roman Empire, and they are currently working together against the French, which Napoleon comes in, and within these first 30 days, Napoleon starts to maneuver his troops, and he really wants the Austrians to think that he's going after Mantua. And so the Austrian commander is doing everything he can to hold on to Mantua to prevent Napoleon from going there, which is what Napoleon wants him to do. But where he's really trying to go is this town called Dago, which the reason why this town is important is it's kind of the middle section. It is the intersection between the Piedmontese forces and the Austrian forces. And if you hold Dago, you control all of the flow between these two armies. The northern part of Italy is very mountainous, and Dago is in a prime location where the terrain is more favorable for fast maneuver between these two armies. So he kind of tricks the Austrians into thinking that he wants to go into Mantua. He really is focusing on going and getting to Dago and separating these two forces. And he's incredibly successful. All of the maneuvers that he ends up doing are executed kind of flawlessly, and he starts bulking up. They're all fairly small, but he starts bringing in victory and after victory under his belt, about 5 or 6 within 30 days. And by the end of that month period, he is sent an offer for armistice to the Piedmontese, and word has gotten back to the Austrians that the Piedmont Sardinians are considering this armistice, and so they abandoned the Piedmontese in the war effort. So the king of Piedmont Sardinia caves to Napoleon's demand for armistice, which allows Napoleon access to the strategic fortresses of northern Italy, and he gains a massive foothold in the region that'll be crucial through the next few months, because by the end of 1797, the Italian campaign is over. This goes fast, and that's kind of the key of Napoleonic warfare for Napoleon. Is his speed is what gives him the success that he has. I'll just take it from here.
Right. So, and this can't be emphasized enough, and it's important for a lot of what's going to be talked about in episodes probably 4 and 5 comparatively. But this is the nascent birth of the Napoleonic mobility of warfare. And you got to remember, he arrives in charge of this army on March 27th. And on April 28th, the Piedmontese army signs their armistice. Now, what does that mean? What's the total, realm of what we're talking about? In 30 days, through several small engagements, the French lost 6,000 men. The Allied Austrian Piedmontese armies lost 25,000. Those are the numbers we're talking about. It's not a minor victory. It is a significant victory. And multiple Piedmontese, these are intelligentsia, these are elite, these are counts and dukes that are in their positions because of their familial associations and appointments. They're not there because of strategic vision or talent. Multiples of them said he would attack from the left, the right, the center, and the rear all at the same time, and it was woefully unfair. That's the attitude that he's going up against, and that's the revolution that's occurring within warfare. The revolution of government has already happened. The revolution of ideas and all the concept of all men are created equal. Continental Europe is established in France with the Napoleonic Code that's to come. But those ideas are in flow and they're on the lips of every citizen, of every person. And that's what's emerging, and it terrifies the monarchies. And that's the revolution is now happening in military as well. And you're seeing the old military be destroyed by arguably a commoner by their determination because he's of a poor Corsican nobility class. And so after with the Piedmontese out, now he is facing just the coalition army, which predominantly consists of just the Austrians.
Which, by the way, when he forces the Piedmontese out, when we're covering this first month of stuff, the Piedmontese are out within 2 weeks. He is like the Battle of Dago. The first Battle of Dago happens within 14 days of Napoleon actually beginning to fight.
Right. It's 1 week of maneuvering. There's the Battle of Montanet, which is a semi-minor engagement, relatively speaking. And then there's the Battle of Diego, and then Piedmont's out, and they're done. The Austrians are isolated, and this is shocking. I mean, at this time, you're talking a time period where couriers aren't even to Vienna yet, with information for the results of Montet, and Diego's already happened and occurred, and the armistice is signed when the first couriers are getting to Vienna about the results of the first battle. That's how fast this is occurring.
Yeah.
And it's shocking. You've got people that have been fighting wars for 30, 40, 50 years that are shocked at this transgression.
100%. Then after the Montenotte campaign, which I believe was what we were trying. Yeah, after the Montenotte campaign, the next big engagement we get is the Siege of Mantua, which is from the 4th of July, 1796 to the 1st of August. And then I think there is kind of a cessation of siege, and it goes back under siege from the 27th of August to the of 1796 to the 2nd of February in 1797. And this is a pretty intense battle. But it's really where Italy is kind of the northern Italian campaign is kind of decided in the siege of Mantua. There's some big battles that happen afterwards, but in this battle they end up getting one of the top Austrian generals at the end. Dragobert von Wurmser surrenders to Napoleon's commander. What's his name? Jean-Mathieu Philibert Sourier. Who is the guy that I was talking about earlier, where this guy's been serving in the French military at some capacity since the 7 Years' War. And so Wurmser will end up surrendering to Sourier at the end of the siege, and Napoleon from this battle will take out 25. The estimated losses for the Austrians is between 25 and 34,000, and that includes around 18,000 killed or wounded, and then 16,000 captured, with 325 guns captured.
Right, and the terms that Napoleon gives Wurmser, and it's important to know who Wurmser is. Wurmser is borderline legend in the Austrian military at this point. He was an exceptionally decent commander, and had done a lot of writing. Was widely published for some of his thoughts on quote unquote modern warfare. And Napoleon respected him a great deal, and that's why his conditions were so in Austria's favor in this term. He respected Wurmser for everything that he did, and while he was not present, he dictated that those terms would be set out, and the Austrians were shocked. They thought for sure that they would be bent over a barrel. And one of the things and this you'll see this time and time again in early Napoleonics, with a lot of these battles where Napoleon crushes his enemies and they expect him to be ruthless, and he's not. And this is a huge boon, not to the commanders, but to the men. And again, this is what it's all about. And this ties into some other stuff, and I'll get into it here in about 10 to 15 minutes when we go over some of the other battles. But it's key to remember that he's doing this out of a military respect, but no men are being held captive. There's POWs, but not to the degree that you'd think, that they'd be, disarming the citizens or holding them back from returning to their lands or anything like that. These are very, very generous terms for the army as a whole. For the average soldier, there's little to no penalty. They're not seeing the ramifications of what a normal defeat of this caliber would affect them.
Yeah. Like I was trying to find it because I know Napoleon actually had a really good quote, like to reinforce what Aldous was saying about Napoleon holding this guy in high regard. Napoleon would frequently talk about Wurmser in the Italian campaign very positively to his staff. And there was actually a really quote, obviously in preparation for the video, I went and I was, brushing up on notes, listening to some good Napoleonic podcasts and what have you. And they had brought one of these things up, and I'm having issues finding it.
Well, he was the primary commander in the Rhine campaign of 1793 to 1794, and Lautenburg is his big victory. He sieged and stormed that. He defeated Jean-Victor Moreau, who was kind of a pseudo legend within French military at the time, and he did it with a smaller force. He did it with just several battalions. But it was his maneuvering at the battle that kind of made him pseudo legend. Again, it's about the mobility, and he implemented the mobility that Napoleon is trying to implement in the army. And he's a connoisseur of these treaties and essays that are being published by the men that study tactics and study deployments and study battles. He's reading all of this. And so he was very familiar with Wurmser, and that's where you get the respect from, because he was well aware of what he had done.
100%. We have some new people that have joined the chat, so let's say hi to them. I think Crazy Mad has come in learning again. Can we have fun this week for once? Teach? No, you get to learn.
There will be a pop
learn and get educated. No, we're actually having a really good time here. Hopefully you guys are enjoying yourselves in the chat. So earlier Nefarious was asking me what do you get when you order food at Burger King? And I feel like this is a trap. Aldous replied, I order no burger from any monarch of sandwiches.
I'm an American. I'm a free man. I recognize no crown. How can one man hold so much power to declare himself the Burger King? It makes no sense.
I mean, hey, that's fair enough. But
fine, Neff, here you go. Okay.
I am not going to. I will be a coward.
Odin, is there a city called Guinea in Italy?
No.
I just want Odin to say Whopper and read my question about a city in Italy out loud. There you go.
I need it for clips. Oh, goodness. You see, this is what Neff does. Neff is the person that started the whole Odin hates Eric thing, that happened ages ago. So I don't trust this. That's debatable Neffin also said. Hail. Anyways, but yeah. So with Manjo out of the way, by the way, that brief pause of fighting between April 5th and April 27th is actually another battle that happens nearby called the Battle of Castiglione, which is another huge Napoleonic battle between Wurmser and Napoleon. That Napoleon outmaneuvers Wurmser, and they're back at Mantua again. And then let's see. I think that the next big thing to talk about would be, so while the siege of Mantua is happening, Napoleon is fighting another Austrian commander at the Battle of Arcole in November of 1796, during that second period of the siege. Aldous, you got some stuff on Arcole, or is it Arcole or Arcole?
It's I thought it was Arcole based off of the pronunciations that I saw. But so this was it's a strategically important location, primarily controlling a road. Around Arcole was surrounded by lowlands, and there was a river, and it's basically the one pass through this area because of the lowland area and the river, and the river Apone is restrained by extraordinarily high dikes. There you go, Neff. I'll say it again: 10-meter high dikes. And they were strategically important because Napoleon personally rallied his troops by scaling one at one point and waving the colors. And this is something that you see time and time again. In fact, there's a famous painting of him holding the colors of France that is currently behind Michael Oden that is semi-referential to this example. But this is the thing. At this point, Napoleon's 26 years old. He's a brigadier general. He's in charge of the French army in northern Italy. He has already isolated out the Piedmontese forces, and he's had several successive victories against the Austrians. And now he is on the front line. I mean, not quite bullets whizzing by his head, but close, rallying troops on the top of a dike, waving the French colors. Now, is this possibly self-aggrandizement? Because also, during this time, Napoleon founds two papers in these what are called sister republics in northern Italy, and they account great flowing tales of his accomplishments and all of the positives that he does during this time. They are basically serving as the marketing department for what he's doing in northern Italy. You could argue that, yes, that this is just self-aggrandizement. The problem is, due to the literacy rates in French soldier veterans, you have hundreds of men that say this actually occurred.
100%. And this is actually where he gets his nickname, Le Petit Corporal. It had happened. He technically got it earlier in the Italian campaign, but this is something that he had already established himself as a guy that was not afraid to get his hands dirty. Despite being this high-ranking officer, he was there on the line with his artillery guys, firing the cannons himself. And so he had earned this name, the Little Corporal, not as a smear against his height or anything. It was a term of endearment, because this guy is supposed to be a high-ranking general, and he's doing the job of an artillery corporal. He's sitting there on the line with his guys, doing getting his hands dirty, being in the fight. And you could make an argument that Napoleon is really one of the last great commanders that you will see fighting alongside his men in battle to a degree that what you would see in the world of antiquity. You don't generally, commanders stay in the back with their staff, and it's a war game to them. It's numbers, it's planning maneuver. It's doing all these things. Napoleon really is one of these last figures that will be on the battlefield with his men, even towards the end of his time. Is he's going to continue to be at the battle constantly. He might not be leading all of the charges or doing all that stuff, but he will always be at the battlefield, and his men will always see him there.
Oh, for sure. I don't think you could maybe argue McAuliffe in World War II with his famous nuts because of his location at Bastogne during the German offensive. Patton for sure. Patton, multiple
100%.
instances, was right at the front. Even to a degree, Bradley, as much as I despise myself for saying this, you know, there's a couple Clark in Korea. There were a couple instances where he was towards the front lines, but this is not the front lines. This would be the equivalent of being out with the pickets,
Exactly.
on the line, and you just don't see that too much after this. Now, in America, you do. In coming up in the War of 1812, Andrew Jackson famously was on the front lines at the Battle of New Orleans. And, you see it a couple other times, not Benjamin Harrison, Zachary Taylor. There's multiple instances in the Americas of generals leading from the front, especially in the American Civil War.
Yeah.
But as far as continental Europe goes, no, this is like the last hurrah. This is Caesar level stuff. This is Hannibal Barca level stuff that he's on the front lines waving the flag and heralding, rallying the troops. It is amazing that, and there are British publications and British authors that say this is totally manufactured, and they completely ignore the hundreds of French documents and soldiers' diaries that say that this happened. It's comical, the levels that the pro-British press go to downplay this one event. Because there's a lot of other events that that are inflated that they don't talk about. So it is entertaining. But again, he got himself in this position, and it's the broken record of what I've been talking about. It's about mobility and movement, and that's again and again, time and again, every battle throughout this 7 months of victory after victory. And there's a few duds. Don't take us the wrong way. There's a couple of very poorly executed sieges. There's a couple of very poorly executed frontal assaults that don't
He's still young and hot-headed, and there will be times during the Italian campaign where there's probably the most notable one. I'm blanking which battle it is, but like they had just completed a really long and arduous movement, but Napoleon wanted to get after the Austrians, and so he commands an assault. And his men just were not ready for it. But he really wanted to win over the Austrians at this point in time. And so despite the fact that they had just done this really long and grueling march, he pushed for it anyway when he should have allowed them the rest. And he's a young, brash commander at this point. There are going to be mistakes. But for the most part, Italy is as close to a flawless campaign as a commander of this age could ask for.
Oh, for sure. He's and this, it also cements something else. And this is a good time to get into some of the where does all this coming from? Because he doesn't stand alone in this regard. He's 26. He's heavily influenced by a number of men, and prior to this, you really have to go back to Frederick the Great. Frederick the Great kind of established how all of even Britain, but continental European armies are formed, how they fight, how logistics works, how the army works from the company level on up. And it's no surprise, of course, that a Prussian was the one that came up with the system of order for what continental European armies were built upon. What is surprising is that it was revolutionized by essentially 3 Frenchmen. And what they isolated and what they saw during the starting in the 1760s. And I think if you want to really bring it back, you've got to start. you've got to start with Jacques Antoine Hippolyte Comte de Guibert, who wrote the Essai General de Tactica. That was in 1772, and he created essentially a three-pronged plan for how the French military needed to be designed, and this fell into Napoleon's lap in about 1774, by all accounts. And it was one of those moments, and we've all had them, where you read something and it's just your brain explodes with like, oh my god, this makes so much sense. I'm going to buy into this right away because it's clearly the path forward. And what it was based upon was the exploitation of mobility. And the way to exploit mobility in a large army is to break it up. And he, instead of using one giant grande armée concept of we have an army of 30,000 or an army of 50,000 and we're going to move it all together, it's to break it up into a divisional organization where instead of moving one army of 50,000, you're moving 5 armies of 10,000. So we're going to go to a divisional level or a corps level, which is what it became in about 1800, 1799 to 1800. It's coming, is the Napoleonic organization of La Grande Armée and the corps system. But what what Guibert was talking about was divisional organization. And then most importantly is it needs to be a citizen's army. And a citizen's army is still trained and they're still proper soldiers, but they're not forced servitude soldiers. And the difference is every French soldier served because they enlisted. British soldiers were conscripted. They would go through the slums in Ireland and beat people over the head with clubs, and they would wake up wearing a uniform.
Or my favorite one, go to the local bar and buy everybody around, and then get them so drunk, and when they wake up, they're in boot camp. It's like, well, you accepted the king's shilling for a drink.
30 shillings on the drum for those that volunteer to come. But the importance of this concept, and this was huge with both the revolution, the concept of liberté, and a young Napoleon that very much loved his men. He loved what Guibert is talking about with a citizen's army that has pride and courage in the land that they defend and the lands which they conquer and liberate. Because again, it's the revolutionary concept of liberté. It's not just about liberating France. It's about liberating everybody underneath the hoof of the monarchy, wherever they go. Now, on top of that, you have Jean de Bourset's Principles de la Guerre des Montagnes, which roughly translated is the principles of mountain warfare. And Napoleon studied this a great deal prior to going to northern Italy. And this again focuses on mobility and dispersal of the force to approach an enemy prior to the engagement from multiple angles. So this is different from what Guibert is talking about. Guibert is talking about you break your army down, but you're still approaching on a standard front, which means instead of one army marching in a linear line, I'm going to have 5 smaller armies marching in a linear line. What Bourset is talking about is you don't just march towards your enemy. I'm going to look to outflank them. I'm going to move as fast as I can, and I want to try to dictate the ground and at least refuse one of their flanks and try to position troops in such a way that they panic and either attack early after you're already established. Because of your mobility, you're able to deploy faster, or you are going to push them to unfavorable ground and then you're going to be able to dictate the battlefield. And you see this time and time again in throughout the Northern Italy campaign. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but time and time again, the longer this goes on, the longer these 7 months go through, it works. And it starts working really well after he isolates the Piedmontese, has a little bit of a hiccup in the summer of 1796. But by moving into August, September, you're seeing everything work. The wheels have been oiled. The army is hugely behind him. The morale is high. They love their commander, and they're going to do. And this is the start of they'll do anything for him.
Yeah, I mean, he even builds during this period of time. He builds the foundation of what will become like his probably like pride and joy unit of his Imperial Guard.
Yeah, the old guard. In fact, some of the men that are fighting with him at this point in northern Italy are with him at Waterloo
Yeah.
as the old guard. These are the stoutest of the stout, the bravest of the brave, the firmest believers. They don't worship him as a god. It's not. There's no deification here. It is the utmost respect that one fighting man can have for their commanding officer. They serve at their leisure because they respect this man, and they will go into the mouth of hell for him because it's for friends. This is where that starts. And you could call it a cult, and most British historians do, but this is what true respect for leadership looks like, instead of just worshiping tradition or a crown.
100%. And like this campaign is also where you see the beginnings of some of his best core commanders as well. Murat makes his debut in the Italian campaign and is pretty fantastic. Him and Vittor have some beautiful cavalry charges, both of which will rise to be some of Napoleon's greatest marshals. And I believe he makes Murat I think he makes Murat king of Sardinia, doesn't he?
I believe so. I don't have that in my notes, but that sounds right based off past reading.
I think he makes him the king of Piedmont, Sardinia, until his execution after Napoleon. um, but Murat was probably one of Napoleon's most well-known marshals, not just because of his bravery, but the guy was always in these flamboyant outfits. You could see that dude coming from like a mile away. He was always in like bright coats with heavily plumed hats. He was like really over the top in his presentation. But anyways, in terms of Napoleon in northern Italy, by 1797, northern Italy is dominated by Bonaparte. And
really, I mean, to skip back just a little bit, November 15th of 1796 sees the attack of Rivoli.
Yeah, and which is like the crowning achievement of the campaign. I can't believe I almost skipped over that. Thank you, Aldous.
So, and it's a 3-day battle, and this is important because this is something that it frustrated the hell out of the Austrians. And if I can get my notes back up here, and this goes back to in episode 1, I mentioned the impact of Marshal Broglie, on a young Napoleon's thinking. Now, from Marshal Broglie, comes the grandfather of all ideals, because he had actually started the modernization of the French army following the 7 Years' War, with his Instruction of 1761. And this it starts the basis, because no military changes happen overnight. It takes a long time. And the command and control system, it's not like modern warfare where, I mean, sergeants matter, yes, lieutenants matter, yes, captains matter, but at this point, strategically, your smallest mobility unit is essentially a battalion. And so it's more about the development of these officers and getting them to understand the concepts that Broglie laid out, and then getting senior officers that understand the concepts so that you can lay these out and get these things rolling. But this is where it all comes together, is really right here at this battle. And it's the, I don't know, however you want to describe it, 1,000 points of light, the singularity, whatever you want to say. Rivoli is like the apex of the Northern Italian campaign and the development of what Napoleon's been doing.
It is considered to be in like Napoleon's top 3 to 5 battles. The Battle of Rivoli is kind of legendary, and in fact, until until the like Battle of Austerlitz, it probably like held the title of his greatest achievement
Oh, for
militarily
sure.
until Austerlitz. Like Austerlitz is going to be his swan song. That really nobody could have seen going the way that it did. It was an insane battle, but like you know, um, Napoleon goes against a numerically superior Austrian force, and suffers nominal casualties and deals over 5 times the casualties to the Austrians at
Oh, for
Rivoli.
sure. And I
Like,
said November, and that's when it starts. And this is the other thing about this is the Austrians have learned a little bit quickly that it's all about the French are fast. So it starts in November, and the battle doesn't actually happen until January, and
yeah,
it's just maneuvering. And part of the reason that the battle even happens is Napoleon is finally able to outmaneuver the Austrians and put them in a position where they have to attack. And so, and this is the key part about mobility is by being mobile, you not only can pick when you attack, but you can pick the ground upon which your opponent attacks on. And that's exactly what he did at Rivoli. And that's why these numbers are the way they are. Um, the strengths are the Austrians had more troops. They had roughly 30,000 men. The French probably had around 20,000. The French
yeah.
only suffer 3,000 killed.
3,200 is the estimated on killed, wounded, or captured, versus the Austrian casualties of close to 15,000 wounded or killed, with an additional 11,000 captured.
The army
It
was
is
decimated.
insane.
The army
Like,
was there was nothing left of it at the end of the battle. It is unheard of for those kind of. It is ungodly, and it shook Austria to the core. This is not the main front of the war that they have against France. This is a side theater.
yeah,
In World War II terms, this would be while America is fighting in the Pacific in the Philippines, we lose Alaska.
yeah,
It's just unheard of that you would be this defeated by this small of a force, an inferior force, commanded by an inferior commander that shouldn't know his ass from his elbow. Just completely destroyed your Southern army and made it, it's no longer functional, and that's why immediately they start the treaty for cessation of hostilities, and
yeah. Like,
Napoleon's the
like
victor.
with the within like a month or so, the Austrians are suing for peace in the Treaty of Campo Formio in 1797. Um, and I mean, obviously, it's a treaty that very heavily favors France, and like this is really where the Napoleonic legend becomes like reality. Is Napoleon, as Aldous said, this was a side campaign. This was a campaign that pretty much everybody on the board saw as unimportant, and Napoleon takes it and makes it the main show and completely destroys the Austrians to the point where, even though it's in this side campaign, the threat of Napoleon coming up through northern Italy into Austria, it's too great. And so Napoleon negotiates a surrender of the Austrians. It's not even the French directory. Napoleon gets the Austrians to surrender, and it is impressive. And this is where the story of Napoleon really takes off. Is, from here things go on the up and up, and this really is the event that kind of puts him down the path of becoming the Emperor of France. So, with that being said, we're at 51 minutes. We got some catching up to do. in the chat. We've had some people join us here. We got Blue Samurai Zero has joined us. I know that he usually does his unboxing show on Mondays around this time. But yeah, he was saying, I thought you were on Wednesdays. So I do a show on Wednesdays. Mondays, I do Vive l'Empereur here with Aldous, where we talk about the Napoleonic era and talk about Napoleon stuff. And we're both very excited to eventually get to the Peninsular Wars so that we can literally just be quoting Sharp like the entire episode. I might even just make my thing the scowling grimace of Simerson for the entire show, and I'll just speak in Simerson quotes all evening. But we are excited to get to that. But then on Wednesdays, I do When in Rome with Matt Krotz, and we talk about antiquities, specifically looking at the Roman Empire. This week, we will likely be talking about Carthage, because there's been some debates about the heritage of Hannibal Barca recently.
What?
So, yeah,
we don't have to get into it, but
like you'll see Wednesday.
Yeah, share that with. I want to hear about that after. That's ridiculous. No, I mean, this is Northern Italy is important, and we thought about maybe not talking about it because it really is. It's a footnote. Although I did find out in the pre-show, guys, von Clausewitz has a book on this that I never knew existed that I ordered, and I'm pumped. I'm going to get it here in 2 days.
I'm sure it's going to be exceptional. On War is amazing.
But yeah, so this is the seeds of everything that is to come for the next arguable 15 years in Europe. It is a fantastic little like footnote in the development of
crazy
military
Matt,
warfare.
I have been using the gym. I'm down 50 pounds. So just putting that out there. Saying Ogden could use the gym is like, yeah, I have, except I have been using the gym actively. I'm down 50 pounds. I'm very proud of myself.
50,
Luke
damn.
Stone, yeah, like a working armed security has you do stupid hours and you're constantly hungry because you're bored. And so I got really unhealthy. I won't go into how much I was over, but like it was bad. But I'm well below 300 at this point, so like I am way healthier now that I'm not doing that stuff anymore.
Good for you, man. We got to get you back into marching shape.
Oh yeah, man. When I was doing the first embrace, I was getting into really good shape, and I had done like a 5K, and I was doing push-up challenges all the time, and I was in like pretty solid shape. And I'm getting back down there. Like I'm at where I was when I started the Embrace One campaign. So we're getting there.
I'm no fitness guru, nor am I exactly the modicum of health as I, step outside to light a cigarette. But I figure if you can still run a 7-minute mile in your 30s and 40s, that's not too shabby. It doesn't matter if you fall over and are about ready to die. At least you can do it, right?
Yeah. So Crazy Mad's poking a bear here. That's Braveheart, which was pretty accurate. No. Braveheart was not pretty accurate.
No.
Braveheart was a very fun movie. Accurate is not a word I would even remotely describe Braveheart with.
There's certain things that are very accurate. Like it was Edward the Longshanks was King of England. That's accurate.
No, that's true.
There
Edward
was
the
a
Longshanks
guy
was the King
named
of England.
Robert Bruce.
And there was a guy named William Wallace.
Yes,
and the events did take place in Scotland.
Yep, they sacked York. That's 4 for 4.
Do we want to go into the things that aren't accurate?
No. That's another show.
That's a whole other show. Anyways.
And we're talking about Napoleon. So,
Thanks, Crazy Matt. And proud of you too, man. Just quitting smoking 1 week clean. That's fantastic, man. Good for you.
Don't say that. Do you have any idea all the stuff that he could possibly get now? I mean, you could get Lou Gehrig's disease. He can get Parkinson's. There are so many
Aldous
benefits
is
of
just
having
like
nicotine flowing through your system at all times that, I mean, congratulations. If you've made that choice for yourself, congratulations. But
no, he didn't. Although fun fact about the princess in that she kills her, like she is in reality a not nice lady, and she kills her husband by shoving a red hot poker up his ass in the Tower of London.
we are so off the rails on Northern Italy.
Yes, but I mean, like every single time Crazy Mad's on a stream, he brings up Braveheart. So I figured we'll indulge him for today. But anyways, next episode of Vive l'Empereur, we've finished up with the Italian campaign. Where do you think we should go? You know what we could talk about would be like really fun, because this relation, like this part of Napoleon Bonaparte is always just a great show, and I think the chat would have a blast with it. The love affair of Napoleon and Josephine.
Oh God, really?
Oh, dude, it's so fun. It's
I've
so
got a
scandalous.
von Clausewitz book coming, and you're gonna make me put that aside so I have to read about that.
No, like you can still read the von Clausewitz book's is gonna take you a bit to read, but talking about all the crazy shit that was going on with Napoleon and Josephine is hilarious, and the chat would eat it up because it's like Napoleon is like the man's man in pretty much every single way except for his love life.
Oh, he's whipped for sure. Yeah.
His relationship with Josephine is like, dude, what?
Yeah, I guess since we're into this part of the show, in 1994, the French Royal Museum, or whatever they're called, they did a global tour of the Napoleon exhibit that they have, and it landed in Memphis of all places, at the Memphis Art Museum, and I went down to see it as a young lad, because I grew up in a family that appreciated history, and God damn it, we were going to go see Napoleon's hat. So
Fantastic.
So went down to Memphis, saw the whole thing. I don't know if this anecdote is true or if it's one of those things that has just been perpetuated over the years, but I can say they had a plaster cast of her bust that Napoleon had made.
That doesn't shock me at all. That sounds exactly like something Napoleon would have done to Josephine.
So take that for what you will, gentlemen. Whether it went on campaigning with him, whether some aide de camp had to carry that across the rivers in Moscow on the retreat from Moscow, I don't know. But there is a plaster cast of Josephine's bust, and we will try to display it as best we can next week.
I'll do my best to dig that up. But anyways, the hour mark is here upon us. Thank you guys for joining us in the chat. Hope you've enjoyed listening to us talk about the Italian campaign. It's been a blast, and we will be back next week to talk more Napoleon, whether it's about Josephine or whether it's about the next campaign that we'd probably talk about would be Egypt, right?
Yes, unfortunately, we do have to talk about that.
Look, man, Egypt's a great time because you can talk like Napoleon does a lot of cool stuff in Egypt. He might not come out with the ultimate W, but he does some really important shit there.
Well, he never loses a major engagement. Nelson is really the one that wins the day for the British at the Battle of the Nile. But overall, if
all the land battles, he gets shit stopped. It's just
if you're talking about Egyptian history, especially at this time, and when I say this time, I'm talking 19th century. Really, I want to talk about Gordon, and that's all I want to talk about. So. Chinese Gordon is amazing, and maybe we'll get to that down the road.
That's the Sudan, Aldous. Like, yeah, he does some time in Egypt, but the Sudan is where he's at. He's down at the bottom. He's down, like everything happens around Khartoum.
Yeah, but he was in Cairo for a period of time, so I have my line.
For like a few months.
Yes, and it's
Okay.
Gordon. Damn it! I'm gonna wedge that in any way I can.
All right. we will catch you guys here in a bit. Love you, chat. You guys have
Always
a great
appreciate
night.
it. Thanks, guys.
And Aldous, great hanging out with you. Thank you for joining us for Vivre l'Empereur, even though we kind of went off the rails there for the past like 5-10 minutes. But that's what you want. Cheers, guys. Have a good night.